So what do we get if we combine Qwik and OpenAI? We get QwikChat. This week I created a small ChatGPT lookalike application and I just want to go quickly through the code together with you. So this is what QwikChat looks like. It has a nice dark theme. We can select a model which we want to query and we can provide a prompt. And after a few seconds we get the result back. Let's say we want to add the same question to a different model. We can do that. So and as you can see, we get a different kind of result. All of the chat messages are stored in local storage. The selected model is not stored in local storage. So if we do a refresh, we can see that the messages are still there, but that the model is changed back to the initial value. And we can reset the whole thing with the clear button. So let's now switch over to the code. So it is a standard Qwik application with Qwik City. I added Tailwind for the styling, and I also added the OpenAI dependency. So let's start with the main file, which is index.tsx. We have a few types: message, a state, and then the start of our component. We define a store, which is of type state, which has a model, the prompt, and then the messages. And the messages are of type message. The message has a date, prompt, and then the response. We define two use resources, one for the model and one for the chat. So we fetch all of the models and show it in a dropdown. And then of course we also get a chat message. So we do a track when the prompt changes, then we basically fetch a new message. And when we get the message back, then we add this message to the messages array, which is in the store. We sort it by date. We reset the prompt, and that's basically it. We also added two client effects to store the messages in the local storage. So the first client effect is basically when we first come on the page or after a page reload, we set the local storage messages to the store messages. And then another client effect which tracks the messages in the store and then updates the local storage when new messages are added. So how does the layout look like? So I have created a separate component for the chat messages, and the chat messages essentially just loops over the messages and to show prompt view and then the answer view. And a chat message is just div with two slots, one named slot for the icon and then a default slot. So this named slot will go into the icon slot we see here, and then the default slot will be just this. And then we have a resource where we assign the chat resource as value. When the value is pending, we want to show the same chat message box. So already with the prompt, and then where the answer will come, we just add like a blinking cursor, and then an unrejected and an unresolved. Actually doesn't do much in this case. So and then the next thing we have is the select dropdown with the models and the text area and the clear button. So first thing is the models. We use again the resource tag where we assign the model resource to the value, which will load all of the models when the call is resolved. So we just add a select with an onChange listener. So every time the model changes, it is stored in the store. And then here we just loop over the model that we get. And then we have the text area. And then the text area has an onKeyPress event. If the enter key is pressed, then we want to assign the value of the text area to the prompt. And then we are also listening to the prompt, or to changes to the prompt in the chat resource. So when we press enter in the text area, then this chat resource will be called again and it will fetch a new message for us. And then last but not least, we also have a clear button, which is going to clear the prompt and all of the messages. So that was mainly it for the front end. Let's go to the back end. So the data that we get, such as the models and then the chat messages, are coming from an API that we have written in Qwik itself, which we can quite easily do with QwikCity. So we can define API endpoints with just like this. And basically we created a folder called API models. So this endpoint, which is a get, will be exposed on /API/models. And what this is going to do, it is just returning a list of models. So we just add some configuration to get a OpenAI object. And then this OpenAI object has a lot of functions that we can call, such as to list all of the models. And then we just transform the data that we get back to a list of model names. So just a list of strings. And then for the chat, we created a post under API/chat. And we again assign or create the configuration. We get the prompt and the model from the request. And then we create some kind of payload in here. And we can use the OpenAI helper function, create completion, to get an answer from a prompt. So we have given some context to the prompt. So we also have the model that we want to use. We also get back the data. And how can we stitch these two together? So how can we call the APIs from the user resources in the front end? I created some helper functions for that. So for example, this get models. So this helper function just uses the fetch function to call this URL. And we do something similar for the chat. So there we have a helper function called getMessage, which will return a create completion response, which is an object from the OpenAI dependency that we have. So that was all of the code. I put a link in the description to the GitHub repository. If you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I see you in the next one. Bye bye.